positive.
And supported by the academically rigorous published research.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, absolutely. You know, unquestionably, this isn't some sort of this isn't edge case social science where there's question marks over the methodology or anything. You know, I've read some of this stuff and it seems pretty concrete, really. You would have thought that given the increasing Ofsted culture towards statistics, a numbers-driven and evidence-based result, you would have thought they'd be keen to keep it up there.
Prior to me leaving in 2013, there was an inspection report went out as an example of very good practice that was going on our new website. And it was from a primary school in Scotland where the upper school children were commended for their use of Word, for typing up their stories and for giving PowerPoint presentations. And that was the antithesis of the rich learning that was coming, the digital culture of animation, of games design, of incredible engagement and cross-curricular activity that was coming out of the games-driven agenda. And that was possibly indicative of a culture that needed to take control and bring some degree of ownership back to saying we are the real owners of leadership here. And so there may be aspects of that as well, you know, this sense of, I describe it as, I said it was almost like I experienced the habitus of education. And you know what I mean by habitus? Pierre Bourdieu talks about it as a sociological term that tries to describe the kind of superstructures of organisations.
Okay.
They are how they are because they perpetuate themselves.
Right, yeah.
And I ended up, the metaphor I used was that the one I faced with it, I didn't even realise it was, ours was glacial. This huge glacier of the established norms, and it's so powerful and it moves forward inexorably, and it swallows innovation. It swallows it, assimilates it, and neuters it.
Okay.
And I think that's what happened to what we did with games. The powerful established forces that drive the habitus of Scottish education basically swallowed that innovation and basically brought it to heel for some reason. I don't know why, but so, that's how I view it.
Okay, no, I understand. So you're saying it's just because it was a top-down, static, ponderous organisation that couldn't change, it wasn't tolerant of divergence.
No, this was a culture of inspection and improvement, so to speak, but it wasn't a culture of innovation and exploration.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, so it's not a political thing in the sense that people didn't like the politics of using games in the classroom, but political one in the sense of control. Yeah, no, I understand that. So I guess there's the one last question for you. I really appreciate your time, and I know I've taken up quite a lot now. But what's the future? What's the future for you, and what's the future for games-based learning? Hello, still there?
For me, I invested 7 years of my life. Are you still there?
Yeah, still there. It's got a bit choppy. Yes, I'm still here, but it's got a bit choppy.
From a personal point of view, I along with some brilliant colleagues in Scotland and England and further afield, well, particularly us, right? I invested my 7 years of my professional career in that, and to have seen it ended in such a way was very difficult to take. And so I am bitter about it, but in a professional sense.
Yes, I understand
that I'm really disappointed that what I thought I was contributing to in enabling better outcomes for our learners to be established in schools as the norm was thrown away. And I feel as though I'm so disappointed that we weren't allowed to maintain and grow and build what we were doing from a national perspective. I find that's so disappointing. I don't find the reason behind it. No option but to seek employment elsewhere, because I felt I was working within a culture that was repressive, a culture that wasn't innovation led, and I felt I'd also fallen in love with them because of how they treated what I thought was a really successful stuff, and it made me question whether I wanted to belong to an organisation that behaved in that way. Why would you want to work for such an organisation? So I resigned. I managed to get a job back at the University of Dundee. I'm doing some research now, which is in a small scale at a national level. I've kind of stepped back from that kind of national role. I don't really contribute to as much as I did, but I'm doing a Minecraft research project at the moment, which I think is very promising. I plan to almost rebuild the work I was doing to maintain that message and the methodologies that I have been talking about. So I don't know what it means for games-based learning. I think it's got a life of its own now. It did when I was kind of leading it too, from a Scottish perspective. But I think we made that change. I think people will run with it. But I think we could have done so much more with the brilliant team we had, with their innovation, their ideas, their ability to make relationships with schools and further afield with industry partners. I just think it's such a wasted opportunity from a national perspective in Scotland that they did what they did.
Okay. No, well, I don't think I've got any more questions. Is there anything else particularly you wanted me to get across that you might like me to mention in the piece?
I don't know. There was so much that happened politically behind the scenes as well. I mean, in discussion with the previous education minister, but there was so much that it was like in Scotland what happened was they invested £80 million in the national internet called Glow, and that became a big kind of a battlefield, and Glow became the main party in town. That was the main agenda,
right.
To get Glow working as a national learning internet.
Is that VLE?
And so, as a VLE, it was a VLE. It is. I mean, it's got great potential. They've just revamped it. I firmly believe in it. But like anything else, there are cultural attitudes. See, I found that what we did was, with our work, we addressed cultures, attitudes, and behaviours with digital tools. We changed we changed the frame of how we present the ICT to people. The people who let Glow and the way in which Glow was perceived by schools is very much, it was still framed within a kind of this is how you use this to maybe replicate or duplicate what you've done in the past, but just digitally. And they also make huge assumptions that people want to share online. And I'm not sure that's really the case. But the Glow agenda was very much politically paramount for Scottish Government and Education Scotland. And so maybe they saw that as what they should invest their time in. But I don't know if that's of importance or consequence. All I know is that they decided to basically just cut it off at the knees, and there was no professional discussion with me about my role, remit, or what the strategy for that innovative practice was.
Okay. No, I mean, I agree with you. It sounds a shame after all the incredible things that you've done. But, thank you very much for your time.
Can I make a point, Mark?
Yeah.
Can I just make a point? I really don't want you to think, or at least to reflect me in some ways, some bitter, lonely, twisted...
No. I've no intention to. I just want to tell a story here of what sounds like an incredible experiment, if you like, in education, an incredible, successful experiment. And just because I think a lot of games players, they get the inherent learning potential of games, but they don't see the creative ways that we've been talking about, that I've been reading about, that they can be used in the classroom. And I just think it's a thing that would interest a lot of games fans, because they see their hobby being maligned, in the press. And by mainstream society. It's become mainstream, but there's still this perception that it's violent, that it leads to negative consequences, and it really should be so much more than that. And what you worked on demonstrates that it could be so much more than that, with a in skilled hands, shall we say, with imagination and creativity, and in skilled hands and people, educators that know what they're doing. And that's the story I'm interested in telling. And the fact that it ends in a way where you have a monolithic organisation coming over and taking control, it's a tragedy. It is a tragedy, and it has the ring of truth about it. What you're saying, I can quite imagine that. Yes, from a sheer cultural perspective, Central London diktat coming in. And not wanting to take the evidence on board, not wanting to listen to what you had to say.
Remember, it wasn't Central London; it was Scottish.
Okay.
It was Scottish government.
But it's still Ofsted. You could still imagine. I appreciate that there's an awful lot of devolved power now to Edinburgh, but nevertheless, that it's that Ofsted culture, that culture of box checking. I can just imagine.
It's the almost like control command culture to some extent, and they just didn't tolerate it. I mean, it was just flippant, throwaway nonsense, and there were so many other stories I could tell you about conversations we had, which I won't. But the BBC actually were really interesting. I was down in 2008 on breakfast television speaking about the Dr. Kawashima research. We were about the large scale intervention we were about to do, and they invited me down to London, flew me down, put me up in a lovely hotel, brought me in the morning to then meet two people who were brought on to argue against me. Now, they didn't tell me that these people were going to be there, but they were told, they were briefed about my work.
Right, yeah.
So I then had to sit on the couch with these people, and if you see the videos, actually you see I'm more than held my own. I mean, for the second guy in particular, was just wiped the floor with him. But the BBC did that as well. It was almost as if it was always wanted to be portrayed within a deficit view. You know, with the deficit culture, the deficit frame about these kind of new ideas where, what is this rubbish? Using games to play other games at home. They just didn't understand it. And I'll just, I'll let you go, Matt. People who make these, allow themselves to frame it in such a way, in such an uninformed way, have never experienced playing games. And one of the huge successes of the consularium was it allowed decision makers to sit down, get their power dressing jackets off, and play games and see how compelling they were. And that was one of the big things that did it. Having a physical space to get people to come along to and try the things allowed me to waken them up to what was possible.
No, that's marvellous. This is what I was talking about earlier in terms of a hostile media climate. And I guess it sounds like what you're saying is that people who are way outside the circle, if you like, have this traditional view of it as being a ridiculous waste of time. But as soon as you had people in there seeing what it could do, who saw the evidence, that it changed hearts and minds very quickly.
Right. And that attitude is culturally transmitted because it comes from that age-old position of status and power that suggests they know best. And I'm afraid they don't. What they need to do is get their hands on an Xbox and go and see what they can do. We need to get them in Minecraft and go and ask them to build the Taj Mahal.
No, absolutely. No, that's marvellous. Thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated.
Mark, can you let me know when it gets published and maybe send me a copy?
Of course I will. Yes. No, it's a strange magazine. They publish only electronically, but it's paid for. So you pay for your PDF copy and you get one. And obviously, I talked to a guy called, is it David Van Eyck as well? Guy from America, somebody Van Eyck.
I don't know.
Okay, he was. It's just. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the story of the consularium, but he's just given me a little bit more background about how this topic is approached in universities. So, and I'm going to try and get you both copies if I can. I'm sure the editor will be very happy with that. It's no extra cost to him, so I will certainly do that.
Okay, Mark.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much for your time.
All the best. Bye.
Okay, bye.